Hello and welcome to the CanCulture podcast. I'm Zack Pothier. It's good to be here. It's been a while, hasn't it? Our website has been down over the past month while we upgraded it, fixed a few bugs, completely changed the layout. So feel free to visit us at canculture.com, take a look around, and let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. You can send us a tweet at CanCultureMag. Now, while we were away, the world did not wait for us, so here's a few items of local and national importance that you may have missed. We begin on a rather dreary note. The Grid, a weekly paper here in Toronto, shut down this month after 162 issues. The award-winning paper was unable to generate sufficient revenue despite a loyal following. This has led to the usual debate between people who say journalism is dying and people like me who say, I hope not. More on this in a moment with Kevin Ng of CFRE Radio. The Polaris Prize shortlist has been announced. This year's shortlist includes Drake, Arcade Fire, and Chromeo, who we profiled here at CanCulture. The winner will be announced in September. The Toronto Urban Roots Festival, or TURF, took place earlier this month. It featured great talent like Andrew Bird and the Born Ruffians, both of whom are written about on our website, as well as other great bands like July Talk, Gaslight Anthem, and Holorando. Mayor Rob Ford, now back from rehab, and in a tie in the polls with mayoral candidates Tory and Olivia Chow, is hosting Fordfest this Friday in a public park amid controversy that it violates municipal code, which strictly states that political events cannot take place on public property during an election season. Here to talk about this and other stuff is Kevin Ng of CFRE Radio. Alright, well, Kevin Ng joins us now to talk about some stories in the news. So, Kevin, it's been a little while, hasn't it?
Definitely.
How have you been?
I've been okay. I've been around.
Yes, well, good to see you survived long enough to do this podcast. So, the first thing is there's Fordfest this Friday. Are you gonna go?
Probably not.
Yes. That's the thing, is I've always wondered who this event is sort of supposed to attract. Because I went to his campaign launch, which is pretty much, like Fordfest in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I heard from talking to some people that had been to the previous Fordfest, it was generally the same thing, where everybody gets together, there's free food, free drinks, which I think is probably the main attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody gives a speech touting Fordism or Ford Nationism or whatever the ideology is called. And it's pretty much just a political event. And this is a bit of a trouble for the Fords because they're going to have it at Thompson Memorial Park, which is a public park. And Toronto Municipal Code states that during election season, political, you cannot have political events there.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got a permit anyway, so obviously the campaigns for Olivia Chow and Tory and Sognacki and the rest of them are all very upset about this. So, is there any question that this is a political event?
I guess so. Well, granted, they do this every year regardless of whether or not it's an election year, but we'd be fooling ourselves to say that this is just totally a community event.
Right, if you look just at the past years, even though, yes, they haven't gone on during an election season, there's always, it's the same messages you hear from the Fords. They're always campaigning. They hear the same thing, I'm answering everybody's phone calls, I'm out in the community, visiting people, seeing what their problems are and so forth, or I guess, subways, or
Mm-hmm.
some of the various other things. So, this, even though I guess, yes, it's happened for, I guess, now 19 years, starting with the mayor's father, it's still inherently a political event, whether it's going on near an election or not.
Especially because last time they held it during Rob's first campaign, that was a campaign expense. So I guess if they're going to tout it as a community event and solely a community event, it'll be curious to see whether or not the expense or not. Because if they end up doing it, then the other candidates have more ground to complain, I think.
Right. The original Fordfests took place in his mother's backyard. And if it had taken place there, no one would have cared because it's private property. It's just in recent years, Fordfest, because of, all the things the mayor's gotten into, it's attracted so much more attention from not just the Ford Nation faithful, but from, of course, the media and just curious onlookers who want to see what the hell's gonna happen, that they've had to, put it in a public park just, for logistic reasons. So that's why the issue is all of a sudden coming about now. If it was still going on in his mother's backyard, no one would care.
But, yeah, or even if they would there be a problem if they even held it, like they rented out a venue to do it? I don't even know.
If it was private property, I don't think it would be a problem.
Hmm.
It's the case of using public property, for political reasons. The idea being, that public property is supposed to be neutral,
Mm-hmm.
neutral ground. But I was reading actually, this is an argument from Mark Toohey, who was the former chief of staff to Mayor Ford before he was fired when the whole crack thing started. He says that arguing about Fordfest is just dumb, and he says that every other candidate goes to or conducts politics, on public ground. He says, Karen Stintz was with the mayor the other day at a park opening, politicking. John Tory was at a softball game at a community-owned center. Olivia Chow was with council candidate Joe Mahevik at a public event on city-owned property, on a city-owned street. And he says pretty much, everybody does it, we shouldn't be wasting our breath. But I look at this and I say, well, it's not a Tory or a Chow or a Stintz-hosted event. They're just attending it. It's not inherently a political event. These are street festivals.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're just, or in Tory's case, just a softball game that somebody was having. So I think in there lies the difference.
Yeah, I would agree with that because that's the thing. It's not as if they're holding their own events. They're just there. And sure, they're politicking, but there needs to be that line drawn, I feel.
Yes. Now, moving on to something else that is out of this world, is NASA says that it will prove in the next 20 years that humans are not alone. Is this interesting, or is this the most terrifying headline you've read so far this year?
I'm going to lean more towards interesting because, first of all, we have to define what alien is. And I can believe that there are some sort of microbial life forms out in some distant galaxy. I don't think it would be anything along the lines of like the kaiju from Pacific Rim or like any of those aliens from the Alien franchise or even E.T. Like, I don't think it'd be anything like that. Granted, you never know, but it would only be terrifying if we ended up finding something like a kaiju or an Alien franchise alien. But I think that's something we would just have to worry about if it ever did happen. I don't think it's really such a large deal.
Yeah, see, that's the thing about aliens is, I suppose that if there's sort of anything like humans, that there will be definitely, warlike tendencies and, their own form of, like, a sort of intergalactic imperialism, where they'd want to, conquer other planets and convert them to whatever their equivalent of religion is. But the thing is also is, of course, all our sort of assumptions we make about aliens, whether they're going to be, a cute little creature like E.T., or they're going to bomb the hell out of us, like an Independence Day. Those are all just based off of our own human conceptions of alien life. And they could be, as you say, bacterial little bits of goo or whatever. Or they could be something that we can't even begin to contemplate or imagine.
It could just be plants for all we know too. Like, but honestly, I don't know. Like, I would like to think there may be something out there, but I'm gonna just wait until it's definitively proven before I even worry about such a thing.
Yes, no, well, I was thinking of going down to the store and getting myself some, some custom-fitted tinfoil hats just in case, along with some canned food and, one of those shotguns that doubles as an axe. But no, I think this is certainly interesting, because of course, any sort of alien conspiracy, it automatically goes back to, NASA's covering it up. They know. And that's the thing. That's another question, actually. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that NASA isn't covering anything up, which I guess we don't really know. So let's say they find something, and they decide to tell us. Do you think they'll lie and just say, "Oh yes, it's just some bacterial, little microbial things. It's nothing to worry about," when in fact there might be something that is worth worrying about?
I wouldn't put it past NASA to lie to us or to hide the facts, so they say, because what if that microbial thing is some flesh-eating virus? You never know.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I just figure is they'll look at it this way. They'll figure, we're a people that can barely keep up with the Kardashians. How will we handle the idea, of an alien species that, maybe like 1 in 1,000 chance, might blow us, back to the Stone Age. But anyway, moving on now to probably the one of the sadder stories to come out of Toronto this summer, and that being the demise of the grid.
Mm.
And every time any sort of newspaper folds or something like the CBC where they cut a bunch of jobs, we have very dreary and somewhat and similar to the whole alien discussion, we have a very, sort of dreary apocalyptic conversation about how journalism is dying and it's over and that we should all flee for the hills. So you're in radio at CFRE and
Hmm.
I'm here at CanCulture. Should we flee to an island and just drink our sorrows away, or is there hope?
Well, I feel like at some point somebody's gonna always try and create an outlet for news because people always want to try to create new things, and I don't think it's hard to say because starting up a news outlet is certainly an immense challenge because you hear about all these startups and then they just keep on faltering. It's just you never know how they're going to survive.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is one of the things they're saying like with the grid is although it technically was sort of like the immediate successor to the I Weekly
Hmm.
publication that things like that are new, they stick around for a while but then they collapse. Like I remember there was an iPad only paper, the name eludes me, that News Corporation put out. The whole idea was, oh, we're going to capitalize on the digital market. It folded. Like you say, there's been other ventures that have gone downhill, and others that right now are slowly dying a painful death.
There's also, oh, sorry, go on.
No, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that I'm reminded of this. I don't remember their name, but they are actually trying to crowdsource their creation. And I think they did succeed, but then it's a matter of how long they're going to really last. So people are trying out new things, but it's
Yeah,
it's it's hard.
yeah, I know. I mean the stuff with that is there's always the initial sort of buzz, and everyone goes, oh yes, that's very innovative, and then things just the people lose interest and also but the big thing is just how to make money in the digital age because everyone wants their stuff for free. Whenever a
Mm.
website puts up a paywall like the New York Times or the Toronto Star, everybody throws a fit.
Yeah, we're just so used to like I'll be honest. I don't pay for the Star myself. I always go to the library to read the Star, but people want free. That's the thing, and there's only so much you can make through digital advertising right now to really cover your own butt in terms of overhead and cost because you have to pay the people that are writing your stories and you have to factor in how you're going to put your content out. So if you're going to go physical, that's not going to be free. You have to pay to make the physical copies of the paper too. And I see there are digital outlets, but I guess building that readership is also a big concern. But I don't know in the case of the grid, they were owned by Torstar, weren't they?
Yes.
So then were they just not willing to I guess what I'm wondering is like if they're under that company, how come what did they not have a similar funding structure? I
Well,
don't
the
know.
well the grid was free. You could just
Hmm.
pick it up. It was sort of like it was like Now Magazine. There were boxes all around the city, and you could pick it
Yeah.
up. So their whole source of revenue was advertising,
Hmm.
mostly because obviously no one was actually paying for it, and like all the stuff online was free, too, of course. So
It
no,
makes me wonder how the Metro stays around then.
well, I mean, some of these things they're always 'cause there's a whole bunch. Like Now Magazine's been around for a long time too.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just I guess those are better established, and who knows how much money those are actually making? Because they got rid of another, not that long ago, they got rid of another one of those sort of commuter papers. I forget what it was called, but it was owned by Torstar too, and they got rid of that
Hmm.
because it wasn't making any money. So you imagine that if there is some sort of progression to this, that that'll be the next to go. But one other thing I was reading the other day after the grid happened and other things have happened. There was an article from a journalism professor who said, all right, everybody simmer down. The Canadian journalism industry, there's roughly the same number of journalists working today as there were, in about 10 years ago. And I thought, well, maybe that's true, and there are, like, I think it was like a couple hundred, slightly less. But I wonder, like, the positions that people are occupying, like, are they as good as they were 10 years ago? Because you hear
Mm,
the same as with many industries, the whole idea of unpaid internships.
yes.
So I mean, that's the other thing is it's not just sort of like how do the companies survive? It's like how does just sort of the average Joe journalist make money?
Mm, because I'm seeing a lot of like I see all these little I don't know in I listen to and watch a lot of like Japanese animation and like and music, and there's a lot of these little websites that actually create and generate content and articles, but then it makes you wonder if people are even getting paid for those. It's really hard to say because I feel like for a lot of journalists, it's that whole, well, if I do this free thing, at least I'll be getting quote unquote experience and exposure, but maybe it won't even matter if it's just some little news site because I feel like to get any real recognition, you would have to intern or work for at least a medium-sized publication.
Yeah, well, I mean, sort of the sort of utopian view of it is that you'd start off in some obscure publication in the middle of nowhere, and then you work your way up the ladder, and then eventually you're breaking the next crack cocaine scandal. But anyway, Kevin, I don't think we'll be able to solve this today, unfortunately. Although I think we solved everything else. So Kevin, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it. That's Kevin Ing of CFRE Radio. Well, that'll do it for us today. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Zack Pothier, and we'll see you soon.